this is almost certainly the same with you, but my last dozen or couple dozen clients have all come to me with this kind of thing as the crux of why they want to work with me, or as an answer based, or they have questions and they want to get this kind of answer. It's people that have been motivating themselves in the classic way of obviously through goals and aspirations, and that's amazing, but also a healthy amount of doubt, frustration, anger, fear. All these things have been motivating them. We can almost say it's like the social media kind of life, or the social media
Mm.
kind of how do we say, motivation, where we see a certain vision on social media. It's obviously picturesque. Karen used to be a photographer, so he knows all of the ways that you can make, a certain frame look a certain way without including any of the maybe the unpleasant drawbacks, that kind of stuff. So that's why I use the word
Mm.
social media. Somebody who's coming from this has actually managed and seen the pathway out of there, but just needs help almost rebuilding from the ground up. Like coming from a
Yeah.
place of self-compassion, self-love, while still maintaining that drive and actually building self-esteem from a place of foundation rather than from a top-down picturesque vision like I'm just going to work 12 hours a day and that's going to give me my self-worth.
Yeah.
As you can tell, this is
Yeah.
probably a very common thing that you also work with, but it's also a common thing that a lot of people, when they're going through this stage, have come into. And it's always about another part of this is kind of like always being in the present. That kind of makes sense. So moving from the high aspirations to and drive and getting this achievement, making this amount of money, building a business to get wealthy. And then they discover all this internal shadow work, and suddenly it flips the whole paradigm on its head. And I actually have a few thoughts about this, but obviously I'd love to get your input, which is for the reason why this came up is because, like I said, it's a really common theme. And what is the big breakthrough for the dozens or so people that I worked on this with is that they're not mutually exclusive. They're both
Mm.
two wholes. It's just one reality, which is the reality which you're moving into now, is more expansive and it can hold with the one before. But if you're just coming from the achiever paradigm, it can't hold this new paradigm because if you're in an achiever paradigm, which is what we colloquially refer to as 3.5 in the Stages International Model, which is the most comprehensive model on developmental psychology that we think is out there, that we've discovered, is the problem with this is that because it's ends before means, basically, it can't hold the fact that maybe I might have to actually take a break from this because I'm causing damage to myself that's going to come 2 years later down the line. Because the other thing is for each expansive paradigm that we go into, it can hold a timeline that's much longer than before, which is why if people are going through this shift, that move is the one that we want to lean into, obviously without disowning all of the stages, all of how we've been before. But the reason is because it can hold a greater timeline. So it's more mature in its outlook. However, we also don't want to become absolutists either. The present moment is great, and that is something which should never be sacrificed, right? But also having a goal and being afraid of an outcome. We can deal with the wording around being afraid. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on that. Aren't necessarily things that we have to forego either. They're all part of the same thing. And for me, at least, and I'm really interested to hear the kind of breakthroughs that you get with your clients on this, is the breakthrough comes when they realize they don't have to pick either or and they begin to integrate both without the baggage of the stages before, but also without the baggage that can come with each stage moving forward. Because even though it's more expansive, there's certain drawbacks as well that come with it that I'm sure we can get into. But that's what I wanted
Yeah.
to start off with. I'm not sure what's coming up for you when you hear that. If you just want a soundboard off of that kind of concept, and I'm sure you're very familiar with those types of clients as well, and you've had a lot of successes with your own.
Yeah, for sure. It reminds me even of that idea of emergence that starts to kind of come online when you are doing that, where you've come into this new stage and you're able to integrate the stage before. You've maybe got over a little bit of the hump of I
Mm.
can't do action or the initial allergy to it. And you're starting to progress and mature within more of the 4.0 stage, edging into 4.5. And then what I've noticed with clients when they're coming into that is the way they orient towards action
Mm.
tends to include themselves much more,
Yeah.
right? Instead of, I think at the 3.5 base, action looks like whatever the business leader tells you it looks like,
Yeah.
right? It's
Whatever
like,
the person I'm following tells me.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they could be a completely different person to you. And
And
very
they
often
are.
that's good because yeah, they are, because it
Yeah.
can like really move you out of your comfort zone into new areas, which is fantastic. But sometimes we disown how we might accomplish something in a
Yeah.
better and better way.
Yeah.
And so what I've noticed, and I'm sure you've experienced it too, and I'd be curious to hear about the specificity of what it looks like on your end. But I've noticed with clients is they just get these spontaneous ideas of how they would like to accomplish the previous task, right? They get much more clear. Like this is for getting from A to B.
Mm.
And instead of getting attached to the process of what that looks like, let's say I have to do outreach and I have to say this,
Yeah.
instead of getting attached to the outreach, they get more focused on what was the intention underneath.
What's the principle
And
behind
then,
this?
yeah, what's the principle? What's the real reason we're doing it? I think 3.5 is so into action, which is wonderful. It
Yeah.
gets a little bit lost in the process and not why we're doing it. And I
Endless
know at that
SOPs.
stage, oh yeah,
Yeah.
God, just end
Yeah.
this SOP. It's just, I'm just doing it. I'm just being consistent. And I'm like, is it working? Kind of. Yeah, I'm just being consistent, but it's like, is it
Yeah.
getting what you want? It's like, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
And so just being more intentional about it, I've noticed clients, and this is where that real, people talk about flow state, which you don't need to
Mm.
get attached to, but it can really emerge
Yeah.
as they're able to do it in their way. There was a client that was started to communicate with his teams. He would make almost art to illustrate what he wanted to communicate. And suddenly his teams were kind of clicking on it a little bit because, I mean, they've been through the standard protocol again and again and again, and it
Yeah.
works and it helps. But
Yeah.
something a little bit different, something that came from him was what made the biggest difference to especially some of the team members who were not quite getting it in the previous way
Mm.
decided to click for them.
Yeah.
But what was really cool is it was much more enjoyable for him.
Yeah.
And because of that, he wasn't hating work and
Yeah.
hating business and
Yeah.
just like, oh, I have to go to work the next day. It was like enjoying it. It was fun. It was a beautiful expression of himself
Yeah.
through a very effective means of getting the result that he wanted.
Yeah.
And so I just love noticing that when it comes to 4.5 of it is really that integration of, oh, I can have that internal community and yet I can be deeply effective. And I
Hmm.
just think that's wonderful whenever I see
Yeah.
it. But I'm wondering what emerges for you.
Yeah. The metaphor that comes up for me when we talk about this is, for those of you that don't know, I used to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu pretty seriously, you could say. Um, Trained about 6 to 7 years. Last half of that was 6 to 8 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week, and then 3 or 2 days a week. I would train anywhere between 2 to 4 hours a day, right? To give you, and then there was obviously study on top of that, and that wasn't including my two, or sometimes I do three strength and conditioning workouts too. Competing at world championships, I medaled at Euros, done a bunch of competitions, all that kind of stuff. So When you're moving through the belt system, if we take the belt system at face value, just because it's something easy, like when you move from a blue belt to a purple belt or a purple belt to a brown belt, you're not forgetting everything that happened at that level. And then suddenly you're leaning into what you think a purple belt or a brown belt should be or should act, right? And what's funny is everyone who does jujitsu for the most part or has a martial art, they understand this. They realize that when they get to the next level, something to celebrate and it's something that's really cool. And it's a new paradigm that's opening. And hopefully, if it's a good gym, when you get this next belt, it symbolizes that not just have you just got better, but fundamentally the way that you approach jiu-jitsu has changed. Like white belt, you're just trying to survive. Blue belts is when you can start to integrate some of your own personality into it, usually through attentiveness, through action. Like you can actually start to hold your own a bit. If you're a really serious blue
Yeah.
belt competitor, like a really serious one, hobbyist brown belts and black belts become very attainable for you, right? If you and then but then when you move to purple belt, what signifies this change is that there's a real maturity of now you're in the upper echelons. If it's a good gym, this is what it means basically. Because the as a purple belt now, you're starting to see or understand the concepts and the principles that are behind what you're doing.
Mm,
Now, everyone's journey is different. Again, my journey is different because I wanted to be a competitor. And basically, the dirty secret in jiu-jitsu is that everyone sandbags, which is basically if you want to be a competitor, in order to get the most experience, you kind of stay behind belts a little bit, just because that's what everyone else does. So it makes it more fair. But also, it gives you more time to mature at the lower belts before you get put up into the high belts like black belt. Brown belt, again, if we're looking at this in the way that it should be given, is now you're starting to make your own principles and your own systems. And then black belt would be something like you have your own unique school, right? But then it's almost like coming
yeah.
back to a beginner again because now
Yeah.
technically you've completed the belts, but now the black belt journey is a much longer journey than any of the belts put together, right? The reason why I'm saying this is because if you've just moved from a blue belt kind of paradigm, which is what we can kind of call, at least how we're talking about it in this discussion, the more achievement and expert based paradigms, where you just want to be the best at something, or you want to be an expert on something and you want to create business in order to be wealthy. And when you're at this paradigm, these ideas of self-compassion, self-love, and doing it for the fulfillment and actually getting enjoyment out of life were probably things that if someone had said to you, you agreed with. But let's be honest, you were never really integrating that into your vision, which is why it's so discombobulating when you're moving into this new paradigm where you can't ignore that anymore because your
Yeah.
internal ecosystem is saying, hey, bro, like, yes, we can do this to get wealthy, but if let's say we get wealthy even in 10 years, those are 10 years of my youth that I'm never going to get back.
Yeah.
Will having a certain number in my bank account really make up for that? Now, that's a question which you guys have to answer. Like, we're
Yeah.
really not here to say either or. I'm just saying that most of my clients that come to me have answered that question in a way of, isn't there another way to do this? And the example that you gave is actually really fun or actually really cool because I bet now that this client that you've worked with is actually enjoying his work. He ticks
Yeah.
off all of the boxes that the achievement paradigm wanted to do, right? Like,
Yeah.
doesn't get burnout, doesn't procrastinate, gets more work done, is more efficient because you're enjoying it. It goes from forcing yourself to do something, almost like a homework paradigm that your teacher has given you, to being
Yeah.
something which is play for you now, while still being work. So
Yeah.
you're not messing or you're not how do I say this? I was going to swear, but I just it doesn't really sound right in the sentence. Like you're not just bunking off, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not like a full play thing, which is what some people might need to be careful of moving too much into this paradigm. Listen, if you go too much into this paradigm and you chill out for a bit, you'll be fine. As long as you've built the right
Yeah.
principles, you have the right mentors, or you're watching the right stuff, you'll be fine in the long run. It's just obviously because we're trying to do imperfect, perfect practice here, we're trying to do this in the best way possible, which is you can lean a bit too much into the fun, the flow state kind of thing, and you get too reactive to
Hmm.
wanting to always be in the present moment. Being in the present moment is great. It's not like that's like a problem in and of itself. But when that becomes the new top-down principle, the new dictatorship,
Yeah.
the new, how do we say this? The new almost like achievement, dare I say, right? That's when
Yeah.
we fall into some kind of problems. I'm sure you wouldn't know anything about that, Cameron, but I'm sure I wouldn't know anything about that either. Obviously, we're speaking to ourselves just as much as we're speaking to ourselves a few years ago, as much as we're speaking to you guys. But if we use that metaphor, we want to use all of this magical, amazing experience that we got through life, but we're just filtering out the stuff that didn't work. Like when we tried, like if we're going to use the martial art example, jiu-jitsu example, when we tried to out wrestle the wrestler out of frustration as a white belt, you know, is that something that we should keep on doing? Well, the answer clearly is no. But the lesson there that we take is don't unnecessarily go into something just out of the feeling of frustration, because nothing else is working. There's always something that can go worse, basically, in that example. Um,
Yeah.
that's what's coming up for me. Is there anything, obviously, there's so much stuff that we can cover here. There's actually a massive topic, really. What's coming up for you,
Yeah.
curiosity wise?
Well, I suppose one curiosity is actually just speaking to that organic pendulum swing.
Yeah.
You know, I think the developmental path is not so much of this straight upwards vertical line,
No.
but much more of a swing in one direction and just doing
Yeah.
too much of that to a swing in another. And kind of the swing goes upwards each time. And usually it goes like at the beginning when you're swinging so far in one direction. Then you swing back a little bit less, but still upwards.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost quite reassuring to notice that because, like you said, with, as you go through this journey, it's super natural to
Mm.
go a little bit into flow and just only good feelings and
Yeah.
just only presence.
Yeah.
And, we speak a lot about moving from that to integrating and creating systems and process of emergent action. Yet there is so much
Can you go
value
deeper into
within
that,
that bit.
actually? What you just said, emergent action? Because that's a really
Yeah,
interesting concept, which maybe I think people might want to know a bit more about.
yeah, yeah. I suppose when we look at emergent action, it's
Yeah.
really that process of bottom up versus top down.
Mm. Yeah.
Often when we're taking action at the 3.5 stage, or just any stage where we use a top-down principle, we
Yeah.
kind of push it on ourselves like a dictator, literally, or like a bully. And we're like,
Yeah.
you're gonna do this. I don't care how you feel. I mean, we've
Yeah.
all heard that from like the gym bros.
Yeah.
I don't care how you feel. You're gonna do it anyway.
The
And that's
irony of that,
great at that stage.
the irony of that is that you're actually saying that to yourself.
Yeah, literally,
Yeah, that's the funny part
literally.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so at that stage, it's great. It kind of gets you up. It's like, oh, I
Yeah.
can
It's
dictate my
amazing.
internal world by being a bit of a dictator.
Yeah.
And then eventually your internal community is like, bro, no, stop
Yeah.
being a dictator. And then it goes, well, let's just hang around and just see what we all want to do. And we get
Yeah.
usually to not much change.
Yeah.
But then when we play with emergent action, where from wisdom and compassion, we might play with even invitation. I think invitation is such a great word for this.
Mm.
And just explore, well, what arises for this part? right? What arises here? And just wondering curiously. And very often we get to witness completely new ideas, completely new
Yeah.
actions, completely new states.
Your creativity
We,
goes through
yeah,
the roof. Yeah.
real creativity. And it's just a witnessing of, oh, that came up. It's almost like you have a child
Mm.
and you're not letting them just go real crazy because you got a house and you want to make sure the house is
Got to pay
not
that mortgage.
destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not also going to be like super strict and restrict all movement to
Mm.
keep the house perfect. You're going to let them be a little bit boisterous, go a little
Yeah.
bit around.
Yeah.
And from that, I mean, toddlers just come up with the most creative games,
Yeah.
right? You never know what they're going to do. Suddenly
Yeah.
they're just hanging out doing a game that you've never heard of that would probably be a great idea to sell,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make money from it.
That's
But
right.
that's kind of emergent action where you're just holding back, right? And just allowing it to organically arise as it wants to.
Do you mind
And yeah, go on.
if I voice something? Because you're doing a wonderful job of explaining it. Maybe speak to somebody who's, yeah, like just getting in, like exactly like we've been talking about, just getting into it, is really interested in all these ideals and really likes the term of emergent action, right?
There we go.
But yeah, there it is. English my first language, and it's still a tough translation. It's still it's still a tough pronunciation for me. Um, yeah, but maybe they have some, because I see this in my clients too, just before the breakthrough, actually, where
Mm,
maybe there's a little bit of doubt, of skepticism, because they can't quite see the path because they haven't made that leap of faith. But what's stopping them from making that leap of faith is that they may be worried that they're going to get lost in the softness. There's still not enough boundaries. Will they actually follow through and do the work? Where will their motivation and drive come from? I'm sure you know what I'm speaking to, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, that's a great frame to bring up and a great person to speak to. And I think when you're at that stage, what's important to know is that your consciousness as a whole wants the best for you. And so I worked with someone the other day and they were having this procrastination problem. And I think that's often what people at that stage, they don't want to just be doing nothing. They don't want to lose all their goals. Like they've done really well. They've been
Yeah,
progressing and
yeah,
pushing, and they don't want to lose that. They don't want to move into a place where they're just like sitting at home, doing nothing, you know, doing nothing with their life. And
yeah,
I don't want them to do that either, right? Because
yeah.
that's not a good place to be. Whereas, so this person, they were experiencing real procrastination, and it was a split ego between their head and their body.
Okay.
But what happened, and as we always do, we explored positive intention. We started to realize both parts wanted the same thing, but just the head had more of a realistic perspective, right? The body wanted to kind of experience this deep relaxation and enjoyment of life, and the head is like, yeah, I want that too.
Mm,
But I also, the way we're going to get there is we're going to build systems and structures so that we're actually living a beautiful life,
right.
right? So we're actually being in the real world
Yeah,
because it's not relaxed and enjoyable if we're homeless.
yeah.
And it's interesting because when the body was able to hear that,
Mm,
right, it was like, oh, you're completely right. I'm going to stop resisting now and let you build the business so that we can actually relax and enjoy life,
mm.
among other things.
So what was
And
that
so,
switch that
um,
allowed that communication to happen?
yeah, well, it's always starting with positive intention, but
Yeah.
also actually listening. It's so interesting.
Mm,
We can say it a million times, right? The
yeah.
head has said it a million times. What? Stop resisting, bro. Get out of the way. I want this.
Yeah.
But they were on a different page because the head's like, I want to build the business, and the body's like, I want to relax and enjoy life. But then when the body finally realized, oh, actually, part of a reason, not the full reason, but part of a reason the head wants to build the business and be successful is to relax and enjoy life. And so when they both see that, it's like, oh, what are we arguing about? It's literally like a relationship. Like,
Mm,
oh, we both want to relax and enjoy life. Oh, and then the part that maybe was resisting starts listening a little bit. And it's like, oh, that is right. Yeah, in this world that we live in, it's a lot easier to do that when I
mm,
have some money and a real stable business.
yeah,
So maybe I'm going to listen to you and not get in your way.
yeah.
And so when they're really able to listen, have a positive intention, I think getting to that positive intention is important first because
Mm.
then we're suddenly on the same page. You've probably seen
Cooperation
it in,
versus conflict, right?
yeah, exactly, in relationships. I mean, literally,
Yeah,
this is an internal example of external relationships. So when two people are in conflict externally, they can be saying back and forth and they can be making great points. But
yeah,
when we're against one another, it doesn't go anywhere. But when they have similar positive intention, now they hear each other. Now they can actually move forward in alignment together.
hmm,
And so when we're doing this proactively, when we're being aware that we have this goal, we have this intention, but it's going to just be a lot more effective to get everyone on board.
mm,
That's often when we get the best of both worlds. We get a little bit of that relaxation and enjoyment, but we also get to remove procrastination. We get to be effective. We get to
yeah,
move forward in alignment, right?
yeah,
And so I think when we're speaking to this type of person who's got a very valid, like, oh, I don't know if I want to fully go into that. I don't want to be like that.
yeah.
And I suppose what we're saying is you don't have to be like that.
No,
What
yeah,
would it be
definitely
like
not.
if you can just get all
Yeah,
parts on board with you, get the whole team going,
yeah,
and go towards the goal together?
right.
You know,
This is why I began with the metaphor of going through the belts, right? Like we're not disregarding a stage. The moment you start disowning parts of who you were that wasn't shadow related, but even then, those shadows you're not disowning. You're either letting them go, depending on what type of shadow it is. You're either re-owning or you're reintegrating, right?
mm,
But whenever there's, if we to put it back into the metaphor, I'm a purple belt now. All of the lessons and classes I showed up to at blue belt, I'm just going to forget them, and I'm just going to learn the purple belt classes now, right? Doesn't make sense. We're using, wow, we have, every time you move into a new paradigm, essentially what it is like unlocking a new consciousness technology that changes the
yeah,
game, right? And there's
yeah,
some stages which are kind of a bigger leap than others. This specific one we're talking about now is one of the bigger leaps that you can make,
yeah,
or at least it feels like that. It's almost like the same technology level of pre-internet, internet, electricity,
yeah,
non-electricity. Like this is the kind of jump. So it introduces a lot of complexity, but we can structure that complexity, which is what I think you were getting at with what happened with you and that client that you were talking about just now, which is, wow, I can integrate these principles of self-compassion, of fun, of flow, integrate the principles of them while and allowing drive to come from them, whilst integrating all of the lessons that were useful from the stages before, which is how to just set up my day in a more efficient way so I can
yeah,
so it's much easier for me to get stuff done than not. How can
yeah,
I build a subtle objective, which isn't actually real? It's something that I've come up with on my own and place that in front of me. But now instead of whipping myself behind me, what's coming behind me is a new just sense of I am always enough and I will always be enough. And because of that, this is what's drawing me to make this goal rather
yeah,
than I need to be wealthy in order to be safe.
Yeah.
or I need to be wealthy in order to feel good about myself. So it's the nature of how you're making the achievement or the objective has changed. And it's coming from a
Yeah.
much softer, but much stronger, more sustainable place.
Yeah.
How you can
That's
think
such a
about
fair way
it.
of putting it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, thank you. I just said, yeah, exactly. It's such a good way of putting it. I didn't
Yeah.
mean it like
I'm
that.
amazing at this.
That's right.
I'm the best.
Well, it's kind of like there's so much effort of when a plane is taking off because it's
Mm,
the heaviest it will ever be. It has all the oil, the food. It's got the most It's got the most resistance, right? That's why it flies high because it has less air resistance. And when it's in cruise mode, it's just cruising. That's kind of the energy that we're coming from. We're moving way faster than we did at the liftoff by
yeah.
just cruising, by having a really strong drive. But the integration comes when we realize that there are going to be takeoff moments and there's going to be landing moments. And when
Yeah.
we're in those moments, we can still come from a place of, yeah, we might have to push a little bit more. That's totally fine. Like it's totally fine. If you have to push just to get things going, then that's what you have to do. Like there's no
Yeah.
two ways around it, right? But just because it was so effective in the takeoff and we're pushing so much, does that mean that when it gets to cruising, which is the majority of the flight, by the way, if you're if you want to draw those parallels, I'm sure those parallels are quite clear. Does that mean that we keep on pushing just because the takeoff was so effective? No, because we'll run out of fuel. We don't need to, and it's unnecessary, right?
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
comes up for me. And an example I can think of is, yeah, I mean, long-term client worked in technology, is now building his own dream business or has built his own dream business and is kind of doing the whole digital nomad thing. So successful guy in the paradigm before. The reason why he left is because it just didn't align. He's making great money, didn't have to work for a bit afterwards, all that kind of stuff. But the reason he left it is because before he was just doing that job because it made him money. And it was also, if you work in tech and it was more of a corporate kind of tech job, there's some kind of status that actually comes around that. That are definitely like people know you kind of have a good job, you're seen as smart, like people can't really fault you. Like it's a very like upstanding pillar of society in some parts of the community. It's like that. Like it's a very respected job. Like if you say you're becoming an entrepreneur at the start, that's not a very respected role. But if you say, hey, I work in
Yeah.
corporate tech, no one's really gonna,
Yeah.
not give you validation for that. And
Mm,
what was the breakthrough for him, for somebody that was going through this as well, is he was already very open to all of this work, but it was too much of the flow. It was too much, let me just be in the present. It was
yeah.
too much, um, this will be my guiding star. And what he didn't see is that that guiding star had become absolutist. So now there was any
Mm,
flicker of anxiety or fear, that was something to do work on. That was something to stop. That was something to stop all
right.
of his plans. Because this idea of building his own business had been brewing for a while, you know? But once we were able to see that, wait, this can be a good sounding board, it's a good response to be able to see your internal world with this much subtlety and be able to see how these subtle states or these subtle principles are valuable, which we weren't able to see before, remember, guys, right? However, there's something greater than that, and that's the integration of the two polarities, which is having coming from a place of fulfillment while still being able to hold yourself accountable and push through when it's necessary. And both of them can exist at the same time. And
Yeah.
it's funny because the whole reason he left his job is because obviously the alignment wasn't there. But also burnout, procrastination, all of those, those absolute classics you can call in the business of what happens from this paradigm. When he starts when he started his new business, which is objectively more work, I mean, anyone who's listening to this is an entrepreneur. I know quite a lot of my audience is kind of interested in that, or they are. I know big part of Cameron's audience it's definitely partial to a bit of entrepreneurship. You know that there's no easy days in the beginning part of an entrepreneurship journey. You're just working whenever. You're doing calls whenever. You're doing work weekends. I don't even know what do you mean by weekends, right? All that kind of stuff. So it was objectively more work, but because we were able to find that place of alignment, not disowning any of his previous strengths and integrating this new paradigm, so it came into this beautiful symphony, like we talked about last podcast. If you haven't watched that podcast, I think that's a great podcast for you guys to check out. He was able to go through that period smooth as ever. Like
Yeah.
when he was going through that period, we didn't even talk about it that much, really. Just like a few like technical things, maybe a couple of principles, but he was just crushing through that period easily, and we were actually talking about other things because the foundation had
Yeah.
already been laid.
Yeah. I'm curious then, because you started this conversation about the concept of emergent action.
Yeah.
I wonder what it looked like for this person.
Wow, that's a great question. So what he was actually really good at was attuning to this emergence, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's a cool kind of framework which I actually originally got from the Enneagram. There's plenty of stuff of me and Cameron talking about personality typings and how we think if you use it in that kind of way, it's inherently flawed. You know, you can't don't use personality typings basically as like a zodiac sign because it's not right. We just want to look at the general trends and principles, and sometimes certain personality types, like the cognitive functions of MBTI, based on the work of not Carl Rogers, the person who I can't believe I'm blanking on his name right now. There's Sigmund Freud, and then there's the other guy who came up with Shadow, Carl Jung.
Carl
That's
Jung.
right, based on Carl Jung's archetypes. The cognitive functions are quite useful in kind of deciphering how people are thinking. Obviously, shouldn't be used as absolutist. And the Enneagram has a lot of cool kind of teachings in it. But one of them, again, shouldn't be used as like this is just my Enneagram, so therefore I'm like this, as self-determining, because it's not. Is this example of people who are more heart focused, body focused, head focused, right? So if we were to be placed on this scale, Cameron would be more of a heart focused type, I'd be more of a body focused type. And each of those dictates how people make decisions and how they process decisions, right? So he was really good at attuning to emergence, what was coming up for him. So very heart based, actually, but also kind of mixed, because again, none of these personality typings are black and white, with a bit of head as well. And what he actually lacked was the action part of the emergent action, right? So he was
Mm.
able to really attune to what was emerging and what was coming up for him, but he had the potential to get lost in that quite a lot. So it was actually, if we were to use this framework, integrating the body a lot more, which is the action part. People who just make decisions
Mm.
like that or just want to do something, they just go straight into doing. It was integrating that and allowing him essentially to get out of his own way and do that stuff. And a lot of that
Yeah.
stuff was coming from, how should we say, well-meaning but errant spirituality and shadow work kind of communities. Would that be fair to say, Cameron, that we've
Yeah.
identified?
Mm.
They mean very well, but there's just like a lot of narratives around endless processing because they haven't integrated developmental psychology. I mean, we'd probably be the same if we didn't have access to those kind of mentors and that kind of guidance, of course. It's all about education. But because they don't have the integration of this, they kind of get stuck in the endless processing and it doesn't become clear, especially at this stage, what the next paradigm really is. It's
Yeah.
just so easy to get lost at that kind of thing. So he had a lot of storylines or narratives or subtle ways of identifying with that once we went in with that with genuine curiosity and unconditional love and listen, it's all good either way, we just want to see like what's happening here. His real emergent action became amazing at emergence, seeing what's coming up with that, but now the trigger to actually pull action and take action became much less. which made it much more
Yeah.
effective. Now, somebody else might have the inverse, right? They might just want to do action. Does this remind you of anyone, Cameron? No one on this podcast, right? Who just kind of wants to do action and
Just wants
throw
to go
themselves.
for it, do more intensity.
Yeah, I honestly don't know who we could be talking about in this example,
Yeah.
but it's reminiscent of one of the people on this podcast, right? So the the hero's journey of this particular archetype, who I'm clearly not referring to as myself, would be to actually attune more to what's coming up,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
What What's interesting is when I'm hearing that, even the process by which the emergent action arose was via emergence. Because sometimes I view emergence in
Mm,
some ways, it's a little bit like you're cooking and you're adding in ingredients and you don't know what's gonna be the result,
yeah.
right? You're not just driving towards something. You're interested in seeing what comes up when I add this, when I take away this, when I,
Mm,
play with this. What happens in this case when that beautiful heart-led awareness
mm,
meets some of that more um, that body center of I'm just gonna go for it.
yeah.
And then when we get curious, when they come together, and then we remove maybe any of the trailing storylines, and then you just get this chemical reaction of, oh, now I can have real awareness and emergence to what's here, and then I can just fully act on it.
Mm,
And just like curiosity of, well, what happens when we put these two together? Oh, that's really cool.
mm,
And then seeing what happens when you nurture that.
yeah.
I think it's interesting just seeing, yeah, how you can play so much with these different concepts and constructs
Yeah.
and how they can come together to create much more than they are on their own.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, it's an interesting phase going through this phase. I'm sure it brings up many memories for you when we were going through this kind of together at the same time, all those
Mm.
years ago. Seems like such a long time ago now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I would say, because I guess what I'm aware of is someone who's listening up until now and is really kind of bought in. They feel really seen, heard, understood by this kind of discussion and validated by it. Is there anything that you haven't said that maybe you might want to say to this person? Maybe even just reassurance or just some ideas, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. It's when you said that a few things came up.
Is that why
One of
that cheeky
them was
smile came
actually,
up for you?
you see, the thing that promoted this cheeky smile
Yeah.
was what I've got written down here, just an idea to speak about, was this idea of light work systems.
Okay.
And just for this type of person that we've been speaking about, who I love working with,
Yeah.
right? Who's got that drive, who's really into truly building and creating in the external world,
Yeah.
right? Whenever I speak about light work systems,
Yeah.
like there's something in them where their head just comes forward and it's just like
Yeah.
something is in them
Tell
is
me more.
activated.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's it's like literally their crack in many
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
And I'm here for it. And so, you know, that was kind of the thing that really promoted that, but also that's not super useful to actually dive into now. I suppose what I think could be genuinely helpful
Hmm.
is that as you are really coming into this and you're starting to attune to this internal community that was is kind of new for you, and you're resonating with what me and Aaron is sharing, that it doesn't have to look like maybe what it looks like on Instagram, where you have to do a bunch of spiritual retreats and
Do the
go
right breath
fully down
work,
the hippy dippy, whatever it
yoga
is. It doesn't have to look
shaman.
like that.
Yeah, it
It can
can
look like
if
it
you want
can if
to.
you want. That's totally
Yeah,
cool. But maybe if you're resonating with this, that's not really your vibe,
yeah.
and you're more interested in, concepts like internal architecture and really constructing reality in a way
Ooh,
that
internal
allows,
architecture. I
yeah.
like that
See,
term. Yeah.
that's just a see, that's what
It's
it
just
is.
the tuning to
We should just
emergence,
say,
emergent
yeah,
accent, emergent action.
internal architecture, lightwork
Yeah,
systems.
yeah.
We just say this over and over again. Just gets me
And don't talk
going.
about anything of real substance ever again. We just
Yeah, we
come
just
up with
say
buzzwords.
buzzwords.
Yeah.
Our own buzzwords, so it's authentic.
That's right. Yeah, it's
So it's all
authentic.
good.
Oh, we have so
Yeah.
much to say about authenticity too. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I've completely forgotten where I was going with this.
You're saying
But if
internal
you are,
architecture, but if you're interested in more of the internal architecture, having a
right.
symphony ecosystem, building that, cultivating that, nourishing that, rather than just go take ayahuasca or do the breath work or go to a certain number of retreats,
Yeah.
all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, which has its place for sure. But if you're interested in this
Yeah.
kind of stuff, you were going to say something about that?
Yeah. So this is where we get into the difference between structure of the mind and content, right? And so I suppose this is the reassurance that your structure is changing. That doesn't mean that you suddenly have to like the same content that people often attuned to a similar structure might like as well. You can, that's totally cool. You can integrate it. But
Hmm.
it can look like this flavor, right? Because we're really speaking about someone from more of a 3.5 moving into a 4.0, maybe excited by the idea of 4.5, right, with the
Hmm.
stages model. And while your mind is really moving into this structure, it can be more in line with this flavor of content where
Yeah.
you can use your internal community to not only experience peace, joy, fulfillment, but actually strive and reach your goals extent.
Yeah.
And when you keep that in mind, that you don't, you know, your progression is in the structure of the mind and not taking on the content, then you can move through this really cleanly. And you can just focus on how do I include all of my internal community in a way that moves us forward together to the highest horizon, right? And even getting curious about what that might look like. A horizon that includes success with your business, that includes real fulfillment, that includes curiosity and joy in whatever that looks like, maybe externally, but internally too. That
Hmm.
also includes a practice that allows for all your internal community to actually be seen and heard.
Yeah.
And so that's what I just invite people into. I think
Yeah.
it creates more of a positive horizon. Because I know when I was at that stage and I was hearing about 4.0 and 4.5,
Yeah.
part of my version was like, I don't really
So
want to
this is
do that.
just for those of you that
Yeah,
maybe aren't the most fluid with developmental psychology. This is when you start thinking in a much more integrated, holistic way, to put it
yeah,
colloquially. So it's a big step up from this is going from what we would call the conventional stages of ego development, conventional ways of thinking, to post-conventional ways of thinking. And obviously, just from that wording, I think it does quite a lot of justice. You're moving from away from how the majority of the world thinks. So there's pre-conventional, conventional, post-conventional, and then there's unitive stages afterwards. But when you're moving away from the conventional stage, that means that you're shifting into the minority of how people think. It's not to get any superiority around. It doesn't mean you're more intelligent at all. It just means the way in which you think is different. Now, please
doesn't mean anything.
disregard Cameron's absolutely atrocious sense of superiority that he's just coming off in right now.
Yeah.
which we're saying in good jest, but it really doesn't mean any. It doesn't mean like IQ, right? Doesn't mean processing power. It just means the way that you look at things is in a way which is can hold and include more perspectives. It means more perspectives, basically. Yeah. And I think that's a good place to take a break just for a moment. So off camera, me and Cameron were just discussing the best way to really hammer this point home for those that are listening. And we spent this whole podcast basically building a horizon, a new horizon that we don't see too much online, for people that are moving into this stage naturally, but they want something that's more safe, is maybe the right word, secure, something more practical,
Positive, maybe
something more
even.
positive, right? Yeah, like a more positive
Yes.
horizon where we don't just go into the hippy dippy land, or we don't continue to go down the path that we're doing, but without any fulfillment and we feel really empty inside. What's a new horizon that we're moving into? And I think we've
Yeah.
done a pretty good job at really painting what this horizon looks like and orienting yourself, but also remembering that before you jump into the pool, you don't know how deep it is, right? And so there's a leap of faith that has to be done here. It doesn't have to be super dramatic. Now, a drama is something which motivates you, then make it as dramatic as you want, right? But if we're already feeling a bit dramatic about something, and we're like, oh, like, because it's a whole new way of looking at things, and also because it's in the post-conventional stages, it's quite rare, especially if we're talking about things worldwide, for the people around you to reflect this kind of ideas and insights that you're having. And even the people that might kind of seem like they're doing it, we also have to be careful that because of the internet and because of people have access to this wealth of information, which is great. Earlier conventional stages can really like what they hear from people who are at a post-conventional stage. But because they're themselves at a conventional stage, they take what they hear, they cherry pick from them, and they make a religion out of it. So a classic
Mm.
example of this would be, or someone who's at more post-conventional stage could say, we don't want to ever sacrifice living in the present. And that's because we're always in the present. There is no future and there is no past. But it doesn't mean at the same time that we don't utilize our mind to formulate what could happen in the future and formulate in the past. It just means that
Yeah.
we should never be sacrificing the here and now, what's coming up for us, what's emerging for us, and
Mm.
push that down because in the long run that's going to hurt us. Now, what that gets translated to as somebody who's in a more conventional stage is just be in the present moment. So even the people that maybe are able to reflect to you, they're doing it from a less mature stage, which is totally fine, right? We can have compassion for people in that. But it means that this leap of faith is something which is an individual leap, most likely. And the people that are around you, maybe you do have access to these people that do are post-conventional, they'll be a really good resource for you. But a lot of the time that'll be kind of rare to kind of have, to be honest, to be perfectly honest. So it's almost like, well, saying this is coming up anyway, and I can't just push it down. So what helped for me in my journey and for all the clients that I worked with, which is quite a lot at this point now, definitely a few dozen, especially if we include Social Sage or the company that we worked in before. Um, what really helped was being like, well, this is happening anyway. I can either go along with the current and surf with it, or I can try and fight up the current and swim against it. And as long as I have the right resources, like if you're watching this on my YouTube or Cameron's YouTube channel, you have our channel, which we really is really aimed at people. One of the big people that is really aimed at people who have this confusion, because we had to go
Yeah.
through it a lot, and um, it's something that basically a lot of the people that we work with go through it. So we wanted to make sure that people have like a resource to be like, hey, like, don't worry, it's all good, right? And obviously you have access to us to reach out for us if you're going through something which is you really want to get more clarity on. But this is essentially something where you can't know what it's going to be like before you get there. You just have to jump
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. Just go jump in. Hopefully you can swim.
Yep.
See what happens.
A nice encouraging message there from Cameron. Is there anything left to say? So,
I think that's a great thing. It's just moving into the unknown. You don't know what it's
yeah,
going to be like. It's going to be a little scary at times, but it's happening anyway. The
yeah,
wave's coming.
yeah,
So you better stop paddling.
that's right. And if you heard this and want to get into how we create shadows, and more importantly, how to heal shadows in the proper way, this will also help with constructs and getting more principles. I have my most practical guide to shadow work on the internet in the link below. It's 3 hours of content done with some of my one-on-one clients in a live stream. They ask all the questions that you most likely would have. It's for me, it's one of the most comprehensive guides out there. Well, it's the most comprehensive free guide out there for sure, and it's designed to take you from step A to Z. If you've never done shadow work, to being able to do real deep shadow work on yourself, so just go and download that completely free. It will change your life in the internal sense. And I also have my one-on-one link below that too. Cameron, is there anything you want to plug about yourself?
Yeah. Shamelessly plug, but
That's
if you
right.
like and resonate with me or Aaron, I'd highly recommend getting in touch with us. Either, I think Aaron mentioned he has a one-on-one link
Hmm.
on connected to his YouTube, and for me, you can have connect with me on YouTube or Instagram if you feel like you resonate with one of us and you want to explore what it might look like to take this further.